The dark, churning water, a monster unleashed in the skies, was already chest-deep. It slammed into her, pulling at her bare legs, threatening to drag her under. She clutched the tiny, shivering animal above her head, its small, vulnerable body a stark contrast to the overwhelming power of the flood. Barbed wire, invisible beneath the surface, ripped at her jeans, a silent, agonizing threat. Everyone else was gone, moving to safety, believing this life was lost. But in this moment, trapped and alone, 16-year-old Sarah Jensen made a choice that defied all reason, a choice to save a life that had no way out. 16-year-old Sarah Jensen was born with the dust of West Texas on her boots and the quiet resilience of ranch life in her soul. Her family spread wasn't vast, no sprawling 1,000-acre empire, but every inch of their land, every head of their small goat herd, was a testament to generations of hard work and an unyielding will to survive. Sarah understood the language of the land, the whisper of the wind through parched grass, the desperate crack of sun-baked earth, the hopeful scent of rain on the horizon. She spent her days tending to the animals, mending fences that always seemed to rust faster than they could be repaired, and learning the practical, unsentimental lessons of self-reliance from her father, a man whose hands were as calloused as his words were few. Her true sanctuary, though, was the goat barn. It was a humble, weathered structure, filled with the comforting smells of hay, sawdust, and warm animal musk. Sarah knew every goat by its unique bleat, by the way it tilted its head when she scratched behind its ears. She knew their personalities, their small joys and anxieties. And among them, there was one, a tiny, sickly kid born barely a week ago, that had completely captured her heart. Born frail and barely breathing, he was a run of a late-season litter, too weak to keep up with his siblings, too small to fight for his share. Sarah had taken him under her wing, spending countless hours in the quiet solitude of the barn, coaxing warm milk into his fragile mouth with an old eyedropper, warming his shivering body by a small, portable heater, whispering promises of life into his soft, white fur. She'd named him Lucky, a quiet prayer, a desperate hope, a tiny flicker of defiance against the harsh realities of ranching. Lucky, with his wobbly legs and trusting amber eyes, had become a testament to her gentle persistence, a symbol of the fragile hope that sometimes bloomed even in the most unforgiving landscapes. He was a creature of pure vulnerability, completely dependent on her, and in a life where so much felt outside her control, Lucky was a tiny spark she could nurture, a life she could fight for. His survival, against all odds, mirrored the quiet, stubborn fight that defined her family, and indeed defined so many hard-working Americans who simply refused to give up. Then came the rain, not the gentle, life-giving showers they longed for, the kind that transformed the dry earth into fields of green. This was different. This was a deluge. It hammered down for hours, then for days, a relentless, deafening roar against their tin roof. The creeks, usually bone-dry veins across the landscape, swelled into raging, churning rivers, brown and furious. The local news had issued grave warnings, but no one, not even her father, who'd seen a lifetime of Texas weather, could have truly grasped the scale of the impending disaster. The ranch, usually a bastion of their family's quiet strength, now felt besieged, surrounded by a rising, liquid threat that crept closer with every passing minute. The air grew heavy with an unspoken dread, a suffocating certainty that something irreversible was about to happen. The first horrifying hint of true disaster struck just before dawn. Sarah woke not to usual chirping of birds, but to her father's shouts, his voice strained with raw urgency she'd never heard before. "Sarah, get up. The river's breached. We gotta go." Water was already creeping across their yard, a dark, oily sheen spreading outward from the creek bed, swallowing the familiar landscape. The scene outside their small farmhouse was pure, terrifying pandemonium. Her parents and older brother, John, were already waist-deep in the swirling muck, frantically trying to load what few precious belongings they could salvage into the battered, rusted pickup truck. The bigger livestock, the longhorn cows, the sturdy quarter horses, had been herded hours ago toward the highest ground they knew, a distant rocky knoll that now looked impossibly far away, a blurred silhouette through the sheeting. Unforgiving rain. As Sarah sloshed through the rising water towards the truck, her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of panic. Her eyes frantically scanned the familiar landscape, now a distorted, watery mirror, a scene of impossible, churning chaos. Her gaze instinctively darted to the goat barn, a low-slung wooden structure that looked more like a sinking boat with each passing moment, the water already lapping at its lower windows. A sickening, icy jolt went through her, seizing her breath. The new mothers, driven by primal instinct, had already moved their stronger, older kids to slightly higher ground within the barn earlier that night. But the frail, newborn ones, the ones too weak to navigate the rising waters, they were still inside. And Lucky was definitely still there. She could picture him, small and shivering, alone in the dark. "Dad!" she screamed, her voice thin and ragged against the roar of the wind and the pounding rain. "The barn! The babies are still in the barn." Her father, his face grim, streaked with mud and rain, didn't even turn. He was already wading toward the truck, pulling her mother along, his voice rough with a desperate, heartbreaking pragmatism. "No time, honey. It's too deep. They're gone. We have to go now. The whole damn place is going to be submerged." His words, born of a brutal, impossible choice, hit her like a physical blow. They're gone. He was already in the truck, waving frantically for her to hurry, for her to abandon the very lives she had pledged to protect. Her brother, his face a mask of fear and urgency, was already climbing into the passenger seat. A cold, unshakable resolve hardened in Sarah's chest, cutting to the fear, burning away the despair. She looked at the barn, its old wooden walls groaning under the immense pressure of the floodwaters, its roof looking as though it might peel away at any second. She pictured Lucky, small and vulnerable, shivering in the dark, icy water, his tiny breaths coming in ragged gasps. She remembered nursing him, coaxing him back from the brink, willing him to live against all odds. No, not today. Not if she had anything to say about it. She wouldn't leave him. She couldn't. The thought of driving away, knowing he was still there, was a pain more profound than any physical ache. She had to try. Without a word, Sarah turned her back on the truck, on her family's desperate shouts that faded into the roar of the storm. The water was already calf-deep, a chilling, powerful current tugging at her jeans, threatening to sweep her off her feet. Every fiber of her being, every rational thought, screamed at her to stop, to turn back, to listen to frantic calls of her family, to accept the inevitable. But another voice, a quieter, more insistent one, whispered a responsibility, of a life she had brought back from the brink once already, of a promise she had made to a helpless creature. She took a deep, shuddering breath, the cold, wet air stinging her lungs, and pushed forward, her bare feet sinking into the treacherous, muddy ground. The current grew stronger with every agonizing step. The ground beneath her feet became slick and uneven, hidden by the murky, brown water that was now stained with debris and the runoff of 1,000 ruined things. Shattered branches, nameless detritus, pieces of fencing, all swirled past, bumping violently against her legs. She imagined what horrors might be hidden beneath the surface. Jagged rocks, sharp pieces of metal, the unseen, insidious danger of a submerged fence. A wave of raw adrenaline surged through her, a burning fuel that hardened her resolve. She pushed her way through the swirling water, fighting against the powerful tug that threatened to pull her off her feet, to drag her down into the cold, churning abyss. The barn, which had seemed so agonizingly close moments before, now felt miles away, an unreachable sanctuary sinking into the unforgiving floodwaters, its structure visibly sagging under the relentless assault of the deluge. The water was up to her waist by the time she finally reached the barn door. It hung crookedly on one rusted hinge, partially submerged, barely visible above the swirling brown. Inside, the air was thick with a suffocating scent of wet hay, rotting wood, and raw animal fear. The few remaining goats, mostly the very old and the very young, were huddled together on a rickety, elevated feed platform, their eyes wide and terrified, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. The water inside the barn was already hip-deep, swirling ominously around the stalls, claiming everything in its path. And there in a corner, half submerged in a makeshift straw bed that was rapidly dissolving, were the new kids. A wave of raw, exhilarating relief, quickly followed by a fresh surge of dread, washed over her. They were here, alive, but how would she get them out? The water was still rising, visibly gaining ground, inch by agonizing inch. She waded toward them, the icy water seeping into her clothes, chilling her to the bone, sending shivers through her entire body. The little goats, usually skittish and quick, were too terrified to move, their tiny bodies shivering uncontrollably, bleeding pitifully. She reached for Lucky first, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. He was barely visible above the water, his breath shallow, ragged, his frail body trembling uncontrollably, his tiny eyes clouded with fear. He was weaker than she'd ever seen him, so small and utterly dependent, his fur soaked and heavy. She scooped him up, cradling him against her chest, trying to shield him from the rapidly rising water, murmuring soothing words against his ear. The other kids, too many to carry, too heavy to lift in these treacherous conditions, bleated plaintively, their cries tearing at her heart. Her gaze fell on a slightly higher, still partially dry, section of the barn floor. Maybe, just maybe she could get them all onto that. It was a desperate, fleeting hope, but as she moved, a sickening, splintering groan ripped through the barn's old, waterlogged timbers. The entire structure shifted violently, shuddering, as if the very foundations were giving way beneath the immense pressure of the floodwaters. Water began to pour in through new, jagged cracks in the walls, creating desperate whirlpools around her feet, sucking at the remaining debris. The roof groaned again, a louder, more terrifying sound, like a giant, agonizing sigh of surrender, a death rattle for the old structure. There was no time, not for all of them. The terrible, agonizing truth crashed down on her. Only for Lucky, her heart ached, a sharp, bitter pain for the others, a searing guilt that she couldn't save them all, but she knew she had to move. Now, she had to get him out. She turned back towards the gaping doorway, her eyes scanning for any hint of a path through the swirling chaos. The current outside was now a powerful, unseen force, pushing against her, threatening to rip Lucky from her grasp. The water was chest-deep, swirling with renewed fury, and she had to hold Lucky high above her head, her arms aching with the strain, to keep his fragile body from being submerged. Every single step was a desperate, agonizing battle. Her bare feet scraped against unseen debris, the sharp edges of broken things, and the chilling cold began to numb her limbs, stealing her strength. She pushed through the collapsing doorframe, the jagged edge of a broken plank tearing deeply at her side, a burning pain that added to her growing exhaustion. Outside, the situation had worsened drastically, transformed into a scene of pure, horrifying anarchy. The entire ranch yard was a churning brown lake, a furious cauldron of debris and swirling currents. The distant knoll, where her family had gone, looked impossibly far away, a blurred, uncertain silhouette in the driving, relentless rain. She realized with a sickening, gut-wrenching lurch that the barbed wire fence that typically marked her property line was now completely submerged, a hidden, deadly trap just beneath the surface. It was an insidious, invisible barrier, stretching across her only path to higher ground, a silent sentinel of death that no one could see. She took a tentative step, and the sharp, agonizing bite of metal tore through the saturated fabric of her jeans, scraping painfully and deeply against her left leg. She cried out, a small, choked sound swallowed by the roar of the wind and water, a sound of pure, helpless agony. She was caught, impossibly. The current, strong and relentless, tugged at her legs, pulling at her, threatening to drag her down, to trap her irrevocably in the unseen tangle of wire. She tried to pull her leg free, but the barbs dug in deeper, holding her fast, their sharp teeth refusing to let go. She could feel the icy cold of the water seeping into the new, deep wound, a chilling reminder of the mortal danger that surrounded her. Her breath hitched in her throat, a desperate gasp for air. Other figures emerged from the gloom, neighbors who had sought refuge on the same high ground, drawn by the commotion. They had witnessed Sarah's impossible journey, her lonely, desperate battle against a relentless flood, many believing her lost to the raging currents. A hush fell over the small, huddled group as they truly realized what had just happened. A barefoot teenage girl, risking everything, sacrificing her own safety, had pulled a miracle from the jaws of despair. Lucky, still cradled gently in Sarah's arms, let out another, slightly stronger bleat, a tiny, defiant testament to her unwavering courage. A quiet, heartfelt cheer rippled to the small gathering, a collective sigh of immense relief, a powerful moment of shared humanity in the face of overwhelming devastation. Hope, as fragile and tenacious as a tiny goat, had just been rekindled, burning bright against a receding storm. The floodwaters eventually receded, slowly at first, then revealing the full extent of the damage. They left behind a scarred landscape mud-caked and wounded, but also a community bound tighter than ever by shared hardship and quiet acts of heroism. The ranch, though battered and needing extensive repairs, began the long, slow, arduous process of recovery, each fence repaired, each field slowly drained and replanted, a testament to their enduring resilience and an unshakable faith in the land they called home. And Lucky, the little goat, grew stronger with each passing day, his wobbly legs gaining strength, his bleats growing more confident. He became a vibrant, playful symbol of Sarah's courage and the enduring power of compassion, a constant, living reminder of the days she chose to save a life everyone else had left behind. Sarah Jensen remained, in many ways, the same hard-working ranch girl, her hands still calloused, her spirit still deeply connected to the dusty earth. But now there was a quiet, profound confidence in her eyes, an unspoken strength that belied her 16 years. Her act of courage, born not of grand ambition, but of simple empathy and an unwavering sense of responsibility, resonated far beyond their small Texas town. It was a powerful, unspoken reminder that true heroism isn't found only in grand gestures or on distant battlefields, or in the epic tales of legend. It resides in the everyday acts of ordinary Americans who, when faced with overwhelming odds, when the world tells them to give up, choose not to look away. It's in the quiet resolve to protect the vulnerable, the selfless willingness to sacrifice, and the enduring belief that every life, no matter how small, how seemingly insignificant, is profoundly, powerfully worth saving. And in that simple yet profound truth lies the enduring, unbreakable strength of the American spirit, a beacon of hope in even the darkest of storms.